Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, John and Lee proudly present the greatest wrestling show ever!
Guys, firstly, apologies for last week. I made a bit of an error with the show intro there in that I played it, but I forgot when on Zoom when I did the screen share, to share system sound. So there was no intro. There's 15 seconds, whatever it is, of silence, but I kind of figured by the time I'd realised anyone that was going to listen to it might have listened to it already. And I'll really be honest with you, I couldn't be bothered to change it. It just would have involved, loading up Audacity and adding it in, and didn't seem worth it.
Amateur hour.
Well, we're not getting paid. In fact, this is costing us. This is costing us stuff because I have to pay for the hosting. So it's not even amateur. It's less than amateur. What's below amateur? What's where you pay to do something? What's that called? Stupidity? Is there a proper term?
We can coin one.
I like to think we're playing the long game. I like to think, I don't know, the big podcasters like Jericho or whoever, I reckon they'd lost money on their first few seasons.
And years to come, people will look back on this, and this is where it all began.
But it's okay, because I have zero intention of actually making money off this, because realistically, in the grand scheme of things, even if we did manage to monetize it to some degree, it's never going to get to the stage where it's actually an income. I wouldn't have thought, or maybe that's a self-limiting belief. It's just a bit of a laugh. So, guys, we're on Slamboree 1999. It's the final first round match. It's Sting versus Goldberg. We are at the start of that chapter. 2 hours, 6 minutes, and 43 seconds in. Pressing play in 3, 2, 1, play. So, do you know what I realised, Lee, looking at this match? 22 years later, both of these guys are still, and I say still because they've had long periods of not being, but they are active wrestlers at the moment.
Yeah.
That's crackers, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how old are they here, because I'm pretty sure Sting even here is.
He's not young or old. I mean, his breakout was in 1988, so he's been a main eventer in WCW for 11 years at this point. So the idea that he'd still be going another 22 years later, he must be pushing 40 here if he's not 40 yet. I think he's 61 now, if I remember correctly, the other day. So that will put him 39 here. Goldberg would be of a vaguely similar age. So let's say, I think that thing on the network recently say Goldberg at 54. So that makes him 32 here. So they're not old, but they're not young either. The idea that 22 years later, I mean, last week's episode was Jericho versus Edge. If in 1999 you said those two were still going in 22 years, people would have been like, well, I can't see it, but they are still pretty young. Yeah. I think Sting and Goldberg still going 22 years later here. I think most people would have questioned.
And Sting's appearance here isn't what I think of when I think of Sting. I don't know.
The surfer look, you mean, from the early 90s and late 80s?
Yeah, the spiky hair and
that's classic Sting, but Sting has actually been the crow look, as they refer to it, far longer. He did that in late 96. He started to make the switch, and by 97 that was his look. And he's had a few variations on it. For a little while in TNA, he had more of a look of the Joker from the Batman films. But he's had a similar darkish, broodingish look now for a quarter of a century. It's coming up for.
Wow.
Having been Surfer Sting for a decade, maybe before that.
Goldberg, he just looks the same.
He does, but he's lost an amount of muscle mass. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely lost an amount of muscle mass now, as has Sting. I mean, it was understandable, obviously, from their ages. I mean, Sting, whilst he was always in good shape, was never a body guy as such. So when he started covering up a little bit more in this sort of outfit, you can maintain a look approximately like that, especially with the long hair and the face paint. You can look fairly similar to that when you're an old man.
Yeah.
Whereas for Goldberg, you can't maintain that physique at age 54, and probably shouldn't even try, to be honest. You can see the difference there in the width of his back. I mean, he's considerably bigger there than he is nowadays.
Oh yeah, it's huge.
So this is probably the most highly touted match in terms of what I read on Google, where it said it was epic and a huge collision and all that. I have no recollection of this match taking place. When we were looking at options, I was thinking, I'm sure there must have been a Goldberg-Sting match. But I suppose I was at university at this point, so I wasn't religiously watching in the same way I would have been a year before.
Yeah, and it is referred to as the classic match between Sting and Goldberg.
Well, I suppose if it's the only one, it is both. It's the classic, it's the best, it's also the worst, it's the shortest, it's the longest, it's everything.
I've not looked at the times, but it can't be that long because there's another match after this. And there's only
we've got 35
minutes
minutes left of the pay-per-view in total. Okay. So hello, that was a botch there. Goldberg tried to get Sting up and over his shoulder and dropped him. Now lifting him up. Yeah, I mean, this is classic Goldberg. Whilst he could do some stuff very well, he wasn't and still isn't a particularly good wrestler overall, is he?
No, he's got the look.
Yeah, and the intensity more than anything as well.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Yeah, it's those intangibles, those little extra things that you can't teach, as they say.
So I've prepared some quiz questions for you. I know you picked up last week. You were quite disappointed with
you'd got lazy. Yeah. Okay.
Right. So, what pay-per-view event did Sting beat Ric Flair to earn his first NWA World Heavyweight Championship?
Okay, so it was 1990. Amazingly enough, both within about a month of each other, former tag partners, the Ultimate Warrior and Sting, both became the faces of their respective organizations. Warrior beat Hogan at WrestleMania 6, that you'll remember well. Yeah. And I think, was it a month or so earlier, Sting beat Flair? I'm going to say, and I think it's probably wrong, Wrestle War 90.
The Great American Bash.
Great American Bash. Yeah. Poor. And then they both lost them back. Lost them about the same time as well. Sting lost it back to Flair in January '91, and Warrior lost the title to Sergeant Slaughter at Royal Rumble in 1991.
Macho Man.
Speaking of Sergeant Slaughter, have you read the interview in that latest edition of Inside the Ropes from Sergeant Slaughter?
No, but I've got it right here, ready.
You've got it right there, yeah. Have you read the first half of the interview in the previous edition?
No.
Well, let's just say Sergeant Slaughter has a higher opinion of himself than most people that were watching at the time. He talks about how great his stuff is, and fair enough, he drew. And I'm not saying that he wasn't good in some respects, but his recollection of how people might have seen him didn't quite match up to how I saw him, at least, should I say.
He was a great heel from my viewpoint. That whole era when the Iraq War was going on and so forth. But when he turned face, I kind of lost interest.
Maybe my problem was I didn't see him at that point. I only saw him doing that in retrospect. So my first experience of him is a few old tapes that he's on where he does look a bit like a slightly chubby old man. And then a couple of years later, he becomes I think it was the commissioner he was called in WWF, took over from Gorilla Monsoon. By which point, I mean, it's one of these. I mean, again, you can see how things have changed nowadays. At that point, he must have been like in his mid-40s. He wasn't like old. He looked like a decrepit old man. Whereas compared now to Goldberg at 54, Sting at 61, to me, don't look. We were having a similar conversation just before we came online about Ralph Macchio from Karate Kid. Amazingly, he was 22 when that film was filmed, and he's now older than Mr. Miyagi was in the films, but looks about 30 years younger than him. Madness. So go on then, next question.
Which wrestler inspired Goldberg to get into wrestling?
DDP and Sting and Luger. He used to train at Sting and Luger's gym, Main Event Fitness in Atlanta. And I believe he was talking to DDP as well. Or is there something else I've missed?
You're close.
Close with DDP?
Well, you mentioned it pretty much.
Sting and Luger?
Sting,
yeah. I believe that the first conversations came up. He trained at Sting and Luger's gym. And they said, you should be a wrestler because you're massive.
Makes sense.
Do you know much about the evolution of the Sting character from Surfer Sting, who you're probably aware of from WCW Worldwide on a Saturday afternoon in 1993 through to this version? Do you know what happened there?
No, tell me.
So, summer of 96, so Hogan has come in the summer of 94, supplanting Sting as number one babyface, which he's been in a position of for about 6 years at that point. Very much the franchise of WCW. For the next few years, Sting's floating around, but just below the main event scene. He holds the international title, which is the intergalactic title, they called it, which is the old NWA title they didn't know what to do with, whilst Hogan is the world champion. Sting clearly realises something needs to change, particularly in the summer of '96. Hall and Nash come in, forming the NWO with Hogan, and Sting's kind of almost getting down to being not a C-level player, but he's nowhere near the main event. So I believe entirely his own suggestion, but obviously with the backing of Eric Bischoff, Bookers, etc., he starts to develop this Crow character. You remember the film The Crow with Brandon Lee that came out in about 1994?
Remember it well?
Yeah, he died filming it. Do you know that?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, shot, wasn't he? Accidentally shot by one of the guns, a prop.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Anyway, he starts to develop this look. So it initially evolves out of him feeling the rest of the WCW guys don't trust him. I think he'd already started to grow his hair a bit, but still had something of the same look. And then it got to the point where he was about halfway there to this look, and NWO brought in a fake Sting, which was played by Jeff Farmer, who had played, I think he was the Cobra in WCW, who had a vaguely similar look to Sting-ish.
One of my questions.
Point. So there was dissension anyway. Sting felt that the WCW guys didn't trust him when he should have been trusted, and then just started hanging out in the rafters, occasionally interfering, zip wiring down, or whatever you call it, rappelling down from the ceiling to attack initially both WCW and NWO wrestlers, with no one knowing what side he was on. Eventually in '97, I think it might have been at the Uncensored pay-per-view, he makes it clear that Hogan is his target. He rappels down from the ceiling, takes out all the NWO and points his bat at Hogan, saying, "You're next," essentially. But they managed to eke it out right through to Starrcade in '97. So at that point, it's been building. The next point. It's been building for 9 months directly, but well over a year overall. The biggest match in WCW history. It draws the biggest buy rate. It's considered the best build one of the best builds of all time anyway. And then Hogan sabotages it.
Oh, bloody
so
typical Larry.
Yeah, classic. The intention is, because Bret Hart's just come in off the back of the Montreal screw job, and the intention is that the referee is going to screw Sting, that Bret will come out and get the match restarted, saying, "Not again. This won't happen while I'm around." Speaking of Bret, Bret's just arrived with a steel chair. Hello, Bret.
By magic.
Yeah, he heard his name, didn't he? He's going to waffle Goldberg. Is he going to waffle Goldberg? It looks like it. Oh, he is. Right on the head.
Wow.
Is he going to get Sting as well? Oh, stiff into those chair shots right to the head back then, where you can see why people got concussions and then killed their wife and son. Anyway, so the sabotaging of this Starrcade '97 main event is Hogan's supposed to. It's gone to a double DQ. What are we going to do? Is that a double DQ or a single DQ? I think it's a double DQ, unless it was Goldberg getting disqualified because Sting was struck first. Scott Steiner's on the way out. Future main event Mafia partners there, or Rick as well. Goodness me, well, I'll have to check what the official result of this is, because if that's a double disqualification, what do we do about the next round? Anyway, so the referee was supposed to do a fast count on Sting. Bret was supposed to get the match restarted, but Hogan apparently gets in, I think it was Nick Patrick's ear, and says, "Change of plan, normal count for the leg drop." So Hogan essentially hooks up, hits Sting with the big boot, the big leg, and pins him clean with a normal count in the biggest match of all time that's been building for a year and a bit. Sting comes out looking like a jerk because, sorry, not Sting, Bret Hart comes out looking like a jerk because nothing's been done wrong. Hogan's just pinned him clean. Match restarts, ends on a very flat note, which they then clear up a couple of months later by having Hogan go over Sting at Super Bowl, I think it was, to then become the undisputed champion. But by that point, the bloom was off the rose, as they say. I think.
What a shame.
Yeah, the beginning of the end, many refer back to that. WCW was still on fire going into '98, but by the start of '99, it was very much on the descendancy, and a number of people point to that failure to deliver in their biggest show ever's main event as the start of that. Classic Hogan. Right, so just when I googled to see what the actual result of that was, that clash of the ages that ended in a double disqualification. Have you got any more quiz questions for me? What were the quiz questions that I accidentally answered right?
Well, I've still got half on. So the NWO made a fake Sting. Which two men played fake Sting? So you obviously mentioned
Jeff Farmer.
Yeah.
Right, I've just seen Sting fought Goldberg to a no contest. Bugger. Right, so we're going to have to decide. We could flip a coin.
I was going to say flip a coin.
Okay. So who was the other fake Sting? I don't think I know. Oh, Kevin Nash. He once dressed up as Sting, but that wasn't necessarily the fake Sting.
Chris Harris.
Chris Harris from TNA, from America's Most Wanted.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's not the Chris Harris that currently presents Top Gear.
Probably not. Yeah, I mean, that'd be a twist, wouldn't it?
Well, the other one you got was who would Sting face at Starrcade 1997?
The Hulkster.
Who did Goldberg beat in his first televised WCW match?
Hugh Morris.
Fucking hell. Yeah.
Oh, out of nowhere. Out of nowhere. Just read it in something over the years that was his first one over the streak. I wouldn't be able to name anybody else's first televised win, but that was
unbelievable.
Yeah.
How long was Goldberg's undefeated streak?
173-0.
Well done. Who did Sting wrestle in his very last match on the very last Monday Nitro?
Ric Flair, 20 years ago, a couple of days ago, three days ago. So it was 20-year anniversary of that, which is mind-blowing. Like 20 years before that was 1981, which the difference between 1981 and 2001 seems
you're right.
A whole different world. The difference between 2001 and 2021, not so much.
We've got a running joke that anything in the 90s was 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah. It feels that way, doesn't it?
Who did Goldberg hold WCW Tag Team Gold with?
Bret.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the build-up to Starrcade 99, where Goldberg ended Bret's career with the old stiff kick to the head. I don't know if you've seen that.
No. Did he actually end his career?
Yeah, well, it was the beginning of the end, yeah. So they were main eventing for the world title. Bret had won the world title, which had been vacated. He won in a tournament final against Chris Benoit. I think, at some point around that point anyway, they made Goldberg and Bret the tag champions to build dissension, the classic partners not getting on angle. Then face each other at Starrcade. And this famous clip, it's Goldberg basically gives Bret something halfway between a mule kick and a super kick. It looks a bit like a super kick, but slightly more side on. It doesn't look particularly hard. Bret goes down and he looks hurt, but only in the same way you might be if you're just selling a kick.
Yeah.
And apparently he had quite a bad concussion from it. He managed a couple of extra matches. I think maybe possibly on a couple of nitros, but only very short run-ins, etc. Then vacated the world title, and apart from something of a comeback in 2010, that was him done. Right. He credits Goldberg with ending his career. That's the way he puts it.
Wow. How long was Brock Lesnar versus Goldberg at Survivor Series 2016?
96 seconds. 94?
86 seconds.
I knew it was about a minute and a half.
And then last but not least, on May 25th, 2003, Jeff Jarrett beat Sting in a championship unification match. What two championships did they unify?
2003?
Yeah.
Well, it's got to be in TNA. So the NWA World Title and the NWA, maybe the X Division title?
So NWA World Heavyweight.
Yeah.
WWA World Heavyweight.
Right, okay. Right, so WWA was a very short-lived promotion that toured the UK and I think Australia in, would it have been late 2002? So they used a number of the wrestlers who were sitting out WCW contracts or hadn't been picked up by WWF. I think, who was it on there? Was it both, well, probably Sting and Jarrett were both on it, but clearly one of them lifted the WWA title. I think probably Sting, if I remember correctly. Scott Steiner was on it. It was just a short-lived tour, so it wasn't really a promotion as such. It was just the name they gave it, and I did not know that. But obviously, at some point later on, following year, they then unified those two titles.
I picked up before. Did you mention there was a title called the Intergalactic title?
Yeah, so
Were wrestlers from other planets invited to fight, or?
well, they never turned up, as far as I'm aware. That was the old NWA World Heavyweight title, so the big gold belt that then became the World Heavyweight title in WWE. Had originally been the NWA title. I'm not sure when that version came in, because that's not the original Ric Flair belt. So I want to say maybe late 80s, early 90s that belt came in. WCW then separated from NWA. So the final time that someone was considered both NWA and WCW World Champion was Flair in 91. When he goes to WWF in 91, he is initially stripped of the WCW title, and I think Luger wins it in a two-man tournament final, possibly over Barry Windham, maybe. But the NWA title is then separately stripped later on, and they have a tournament in '92 in Japan, in which Masa Chono beats Rick Rude in the final. So Masa Chono then is the NWA champion, and by that point, in summer of '92, Vader or possibly Ron Simmons is the WCW champion. So they're two completely separate titles at that point. The title ends up getting defended again in WCW. So at that point, it's all a bit of a mess. I remember it being on WCW Worldwide that there was both the WCW World Heavyweight Champion and the NWA World Heavyweight Champion.
Yeah.
It ends up in '94. I think Flair has it at some point. Rick Rude definitely does. And I think the final champion is Sting. At that point, they've completely fallen out or separated from NWA, so they start referring to it as the Intergalactic Championship. And then they unify it. So it will be Sting as Intergalactic Champion versus Flair as WCW Champion. They unify it just before Hogan comes in, ready to drop it to him.
Such a shit name.
Right, it's up there with the
Just imagine sat around a table and someone saying, "Well, what's bigger than the world?
The galaxy."
That's it.
What's even bigger than the galaxy? Like, I don't know, like intergalactic. But to be honest, I'm not a massive fan of the Universal title as a name. Like, essentially, that's the modern day equivalent of the World Heavyweight title, the big gold belt that Jericho and Edge were feuding over. And to me, that always stood out as being, maybe it wasn't quite on the same level as the WWE Championship, but give or take, they were about the same.
Yeah.
Whereas now it very much seems that the WWE champion is the main champion and the Universal champion is secondary. Even though they put it on Roman Reigns at the moment, it just doesn't seem.
No, I agree with that.
It's the name, it's the belt design.
Yeah. 100%.
Any more quiz questions for me? Or is that it?
Another one, but this is probably really easy for you. Who did Sting, Lex Luger, and Randy Savage fight at the Bash at the Beach, 1996?
Hall and Nash, and then Hogan comes out to be the third man.
And they were known as?
The Outsiders, but they weren't. So Hall and Nash were known as the Outsiders going into it, and then after Hogan defects and joins them, they become the NWO in total, yeah. The New World Organization, as Hogan accidentally calls them. in the post-match interview, he keeps saying a New World Organization. And clearly backstage, Bischoff is going, order, order. It's not quite up there with, do you remember when he was hosting, in fact, you might have seen this, in 2014, when he was hosting WrestleMania 30, Hogan started referring to being in the, let me get this the right way around. Is it the Superdome? But either way, he got the wrong name of the stadium. And he was clearly thinking about when he was slamming Andre back at WrestleMania 3. So I tell you what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to Hogan ending racism at WrestleMania. Have you seen this?
Hogan
ending racism.
Oh, right.
So
drop or
yeah. So he's hosting WrestleMania. What's that? A week on Sunday, Saturday with Titus O'Neil.
Right.
It's a coincidence that he's black and that Hogan's a confirmed racist that they want to rehabilitate his image for. That's nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how it's going to work, but I think between Hogan and Titus, they're going to they're going to end racism for good.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, time someone took it seriously.
Well, it's pretty into how I'm not bothered what they do, but that's clearly their attempt to prove, see, Hulk's not a racist. He might have said the N-word, but he's hanging out with a black man.
Yeah, that is the thing, isn't it? Well, I've got black friends.
Well, I love that when people say that. I'm like, who are your black friends? Well, it's the guy at the shop. What's his name? The black guy, you know, okay, brilliant. Right, so what we're going to do, coin toss, do you have a coin on you?
Yes.
Right, what we're going to do, heads for, okay, Goldberg likes to bang his head against ring posts and doors, so shall we say heads Goldberg, tails Sting?
Head for Goldberg, tails for Sting, yeah?
Yeah, go on, what we got?
Heads it is.
Heads it is, that's Goldberg. Now, the winner of the last match was Jericho. We can struggle with that. We've got Scott Hall. There will be a Scott Hall Goldberg. Yeah, I think maybe we should actually just have a bit of engineering of the brackets off podcast, because that's going to take a little bit of working out. I'll put together the people that have gone through, and we'll figure out who goes. What the This is going to be the semi-finals next. Is that right?
Yeah, I already.
Yeah.
No, quarterfinals.
Quarterfinals, because we've had 8 so far. Then we have 4 quarters, 2 semis, and a final.
Yeah.
Awesome, right, guys? Hope you enjoyed that. See you next week.